fast forward to the time we started getting our political independence, late 1950s, 1960s. We had counted over 100 European forts and castles along the coast of West Africa, which I prefer calling them slave dungeons. Interestingly, Ghana, with a coastline a little above 500 kilometers, we had counted over 50 out of 100 forts and castles. The reason being that Portuguese who came first were dealing with gold. So everyone who wanted to compete decided to come closer. So at the moment, we have 17 of them standing that we can visit. And there are only 3 castles. When I say castle, I'm referring to the largest slave dungeons. Only 3 of them in West Africa. And all these 3 is found here. So we can't talk of Christianborg slave castle in Accra, used by the Danish. We have British slave castle in Cape Coast, a town not far from here. And then we are in the Portuguese one, Elmina Castle, built in 1482.
You said the one in across the Dutch?
That's the Danish.
Danish.
Portuguese were here in 1471, basically for 2 main reasons: to trade and also to spread Christianity. At the time, they introduced what we call barter trade. In other words, they were exchanging goods for goods. So they would come with mirror, sugar, alcohol, textiles in exchange for gold, ivory, and spices. One of the major commodities that they were so much interested in at the time, and still interested in, was gold. So at the rate they were getting it, it gave them an idea that gold mine is found along the stretch. So Portuguese then named or called this place El Mina, meaning the mine. But the locals couldn't see this properly. So it was corrupted as El Mina, now the name of this place. But let's look at something. I keep reminding people that it is not like Portuguese discovered this place as we've been told in our books that all the discoveries in the world were made by them. No, we were here before they came. Meaning that we have a name for this place. Now here is called Anum Mansa. Let's go through. Everybody will know how to say it. Anum Mansa, meaning, can you say it?
Anu Mansa.
Mansa.
Anu Mansa.
Anum Mansa, meaning inexhaustible water. Very beautiful name, right?
Yes.
But how do you get this name in most of our books? All that you will hear is Elmina, Elmina. I keep telling people that, in fact, if you're an African and you keep a name that you don't understand, you need to look at it again. Because names are very important. One, as I said, because Gabi said, a nation of people without knowledge of their history, their origin and culture, they're like tree without roots. So knowing who you are is important. Make people going forward. And nobody will call you want to do something. That's how we are. So in 1482, when this castle was built, this is what the Portuguese made the locals to understand. Now this was nothing to protect their traders, to protect the trade. So they put in the construction. But in the early part of the 1500s, when the transatlantic slave trade began, these became dungeons where our people were held before they were sent out to the Caribbean and the Americas. Now, this is a subject that I will go into it by detail, but for the meantime, please. And let's say that for a period of 155 years, which the Portuguese occupied Elmina slave castle, 110 years was used for slave trade. At a point, people of Elmina became fed up with the activities of the Portuguese so far as the slave trade was concerned. So they wanted to get rid of them. They, for me, was a mistake. But that's what they did at the time. They collaborated with the Dutch. And another European nation. For me, you could have done it differently, using other African whatever to do that. They didn't do that because Dutch were not into slave trade at the time. They were thinking that as these messiahs sort of were coming in, slave trade would stop. It became like what we used to say, from frying pan to fire. Went from bad to worse. They also expanded the structure to contain more captives. Dutch were here for 235 years. In between Portuguese and Dutch, we are talking about 325 years for slave trade. In 1807, British Parliament abolished slavery. 1814, Dutch also abolished slavery, not the trade. So the trade itself went on illegally for over 50 years. So in the 1870s, this very structure was no longer profitable for them. Dutch then sold it to the British. Now, British were here from 1872 up to the time we had our independence, 1957.
Wow.
1960, this is what Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said when he became a president. He said, when a black man is given the chance, we are more than capable of managing our own affairs. He's saying that it is time. What's why? He said for about 400 years or so, our image, African personality, has been used to commodity, meant to be sold in the open market and so forth. So let's redeem ourselves. Let's create African personality. In fact, let's come together, saying that in unity there was strength. Those people who knew what it was about collaborated with the West, have been overthrown in 1966. I'm trying to say that to men that what the founding fathers of Africa were talking about in the 1950s, 1960s is what we are still talking about today. Africa must unite.
Yes.
So he asked the British to go back home, 1960. In fact, they did. You agree with me that today they are back in the system on the continent with a different style, a different shape, different mentality, different place. I tell you, I did the previous day that when you see these white people on the continent, don't think that they are for the Christmas. They are not, Santa Cruz, they are to dole out, gifts. They are here for a real business. So it's about time that we need to find, how to engage them at that level. Because they are very consistent. So we need to know the strategies and the methods that they adopt. So out of 500 years existence of this building, nearly 400 years of its history is about slavery. And this is what we are now going to look at it. Before I do, people keep asking that there were slaves in Africa before European came. People even used to say, well, the Africans who sold Africans into slavery. It was the chiefs, a whole lot of them. You have heard a lot of them.
Yeah.
But let me put this on record. That Europeans were not strangers to this trade. We should also know that there is nowhere on the record which shows that also is that when the Europeans had not set foot on our soil, we were capturing ourselves, selling our people across the Atlantic to the Caribbean and the Americas as slaves. There's nowhere on the record. The first point you understand that transatlantic slave trade was something which was designed by the Europeans to work as well. I will explain that. In 1492, 10 years upon the completion of this structure was when we were told that Columbus, some say he got drifted, but I would say he actually got lost and entered the Caribbean. When these Europeans finally got there, they had the Red Indians as a source of labor, where they were using them to work. The story continued that these Indians were dying a recommendation of one of the Roman Catholic priests called Bartholomew de las Casas, saying that, hey, why don't you try the Africans? So 50 Africans were sent from a place, what do you call it, from Lisbon, sent to a place then called Hispaniola. Now, this place is not between Haiti and Dominican Republic. They got to know that comparatively our people could resist the disease much better than them. So more of our people were to be sent over there. At that time in history, Portuguese were the only Europeans in the entire West Africa operating from here. Under the blessing of the church, when I say the church, I am talking Roman Catholic Church. And upon a royal order under the Ascentos, they were given the license to send people from here. Some people like to say to send slaves. We were not slaves. We were not. Send people from here to the New World. So initially, this is what they were doing. They were moving along the coast, capturing people themselves for several decades. But over time, they sat back and they got to know that the strategy that they were using was not working. So what they sought to do was to collaborate with the Africans. Let's have a conversation. For me, one of the major factors which contributed to the growth of Atlantic slave trade has to do with the nature of our system prior to the coming of the Europeans. Why am I saying that? We all know that our civilization, our history as people, never began when the Europeans fought on our soil. We have history to tell. We have a story to tell. Remember, there was a time that this continent was described as the cradle of civilization. I talk of Egypt, Nubia, and other civilizations that has rise up on the continent. We have had universities of higher learning on the continent. Jane, Timbuktu. Timbuktu was described as the rare famous of learning on the continent. Let me zero in down to West Africa. Are you still listening? We have had beautiful and wonderful empires. Mali Empire, Songhai Empire, Ghana Empire, and so forth.
Right.
But this is the problem. There are times we don't look at it. I have said that. One of our major problems, we all know it, as Africans, is that we always allow our visitors to overstay their welcome. We are too hospitable.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
We embrace even our enemies. Even when they were stabbing us in the back, we say, oh, okay, it's well. Even they are pulling our neck. Oh, it's okay, it's fine. That's the problem. So, we saw all these empires being collapsed. Why? We had the Ghana Empire, that's what happened. We had the foreigners coming in to trade with us. We give them all the power, all the secret, whatever they know. And soon, this empire collapsed. As of our own kind of survival, our own kind of resilience, that's the word. We came up with Mali Empire led by Sundiata Keita. Remember, he became number one billionaire at the time. So what this empire also collapsed. The same. We formed the Songhai Empire, also collapsed. Now, what is the problem here? When these empires began to collapse, people now began to move in groups, in bits. What you may say, tribes, kingdoms, and so on and so forth. It was that same period when these Europeans came. So they were quick enough to capitalize on our deficiencies, on our weakness. Succeeded in setting us up. We are no longer families, we are no longer brothers, rather we are enemies. So we were fighting among ourselves. That means today we are not still fighting. We are still fighting. If you looked or examined critically the method that they put in place prior to our enslavement, was division. Divide and conquer. It was the same method they put in place prior to our colonization. So remember, in 1884, 1885, during the Berlin Conference, they sat down to divide this continent among themselves. So if you look at it today, Africans in Africa are divided, just like Africans living outside the continent.
Yep.
Maybe you have not. This one have not looked at. We are the only continent in the world that speak language which is not ours. Language that we are so proud of. As Anglophone Africans, those who speak English. Francophone Africans, those who speak
French.
Lusophones, those who speak Portuguese. And some are so proud to say they are Arabs. This is making African unity very difficult to attain. Why unity? Because there is no unity. Forget about everything. There is no nation of people which can develop when they allow the That's how we say. United we stand, divided we fall. And a house divides against itself cannot stand. We have all the resources you can think of. Naturally. Gold, diamonds, whatever. Yet, this continent is described as one of the poorest. It tells you that we are not doing something correct. If we keep doing the same thing repeatedly, we don't get the same results. So going forward, let's change the system. 400 years of slavery, several years of colonization. This is our strength as people. Upon all these, Africa continues to remain the second populous continent on the earth. In terms of race, right? Black people we dominate the race, the entire race.
Right.
That is the strength. Numbers are very important. But what we do also know is that numbers without unity is nothing. That is why today we have become one of the endangered species among human beings on the earth. In Asia, they are chasing African people. In Europe, it is happening. In America, it's getting worse and worse. In the Caribbean, it's happening. Even on our own soil, we don't have that kind of recognition that we have to get from our own people. Rather, we want to salute the white person. It tells you that there is something that you can drive you to be. We need to work out together. We are in this together. So we can sit down. Avoid things getting worse like this. Let's hope that we can help the system in our own small way. Before we get to that, let me give you one scenario. At the time of slavery, or Atlantic slavery, they had 1,000 Africans in the dungeons. Above these dungeons were the residents for the Europeans. There were over 100, a little 100 people, 120, 110, that kind of stuff. And in the outside, we have thousands and millions of our people living there. It could have been possible that we would have come together and say, hey, you descendant people, leave this place for all these things to stop. But it continued because we bought into the propaganda, their propaganda, that those people in the dungeons are not us. They are from different tribes. They are not from our tribe. They are different kingdoms. They are different this. So it is them, not us. So going through all this, we then seem to kill. And that is how it works. So I pray that going forward, let's see the need of us coming together, working in our own small way, so that together we will get to that point we all aspire to. Ashe.
Ashe.